Alrighty, hello everyone. We are starting our work study for this week. We have a couple of things, presentation on police vehicles, police enterprise fleet management, and then town IT services after that. So I don't know who has the floor, who wants the floor. Chief Hilton? Are these on, by the way? I'm not hearing anything.
Mr. President, council members.
Hang on one second, Jim, sorry.
Check, test. I don't hear it.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
It's working. Check, test. There we go.
There we go. Okay. Carry on.
Mr. President, council members, tonight I'm bringing to you guys Aaron Stoner. He's from Enterprise Leasing Vehicles. He has an account with a couple of different towns around here. I know Lebanon's one of his decent-sized accounts that kind of comparable to us. Last year in my budget presentation, I brought to you guys the idea of possibly leasing vehicles instead of purchasing with bonds to try to save the town some money. So tonight he's just going to come up, kind of introduce himself and give you a short presentation, how the leasing of vehicles works and how he maintains that and how it could possibly save us some money. So with that being said, Aaron, if you'll come up here, it's all yours. There's your clicker there.
Perfect. Myself a hard copy, but I also brought these. Yeah, thanks, Chief. My name's Aaron Stoner. I'm with the Fleet Management Division of Enterprise. I think most folks have either used us for rental and sort of understand that division. My division isn't lucky enough to get commercials and things like that, so I have to come out and kind of educate people on what it is we do. And really what it's all about is it's taking the same concepts that have made the rental operation profitable over the years and applying those to different cities, counties, towns, and even private businesses. So Chief mentioned Lebanon, Hendricks County, right down the street, has been a good client of ours for about 5 years now. But if you take a look at the slide here, a lot of times people focus on, the acquisition portion. And in today's market, obviously that's never been more important. It's extremely important to time the market, buy vehicles at the right time. But what the rental operation does a really good job of is buying with the end in mind. And so if you think about the resale portion, our fleet clients get the expertise that our rental operation has to make sure we drive the vehicle over the right time and miles. If we're able to do that, we can buy extremely well, which is something you guys can already do. You can utilize Enterprise to then sell extremely well. And if we've now found that right life cycle, right time and miles, it might make sense to use some of our funding. Chief mentioned leasing that I'll dive into in a little bit more detail, to kind of pay for the portion of the vehicle you're going to use. Beyond that, we can set up fuel and maintenance programs so that we're tracking all of the spend that's going into operating the fleet. That way we know down to every last dollar what we're spending so that we can continue to make the right recommendations, but also provide ongoing consultation in terms of how we can sort of tweak that program. We will also handle license and title. We'll handle the entire aftermarket upfit. Obviously, that can be a pretty big, important part when we're talking about, police and sheriff vehicles. See if I click on the right thing here. What am I supposed to be clicking? Okay. I mentioned total cost of ownership. Again, what it's all about is making sure we're buying vehicles at the right time and moving out of those vehicles before they start to cost us an arm and a leg. So this is obviously an over kind of simplified version of that concept. But what it is for every vehicle, we want to help you pinpoint what that looks like, what that right time and miles is, so that you're essentially taking taxpayer dollars and using them in the most efficient way possible. You're providing the vehicles that your various departments need, but you're not pouring good money into bad vehicles. That's a huge part of our concept. And it's what our rental operation does, and it's a huge profit center on that side of the business, and obviously can have a huge impact on the budget, for a city, a county, a town. If you want to click to that next one. Okay, I can. I've got to fix this slide. I have to click this 30 times. So I mentioned, obviously you can go out and you can pay cash for a vehicle. You can go out and get your own sort of financing. But our whole concept is if we know what that right time in miles is, let's pay for the portion of the vehicle that we're going to use. So this is sort of an overly simplified example of going out and buying a $25,000 vehicle. At the end of that period of time, at the end of a year and 10,000 miles, we know this vehicle is going to be worth roughly $26,500. So essentially our concept is let's not lock up that $25,000 in the vehicle. Let's finance the vehicle from 25 down to 21, knowing at the end of that period the vehicle is going to be worth $26,500. That equity gap on the back end is the town's money. So now we've created that equity that provides flexibility, and so we're not dealing with sort of that closed-end lease with over mileage, wear and tear penalties. Everything is based on that equity, and we help you forecast that and sort of manage that over time. So that concept is obviously very different than really anything else that's out there. Before I move on to the analysis, I'd like to pause here to just answer any questions you might have.
How much would a monthly payment be?
So it's going to vary based on vehicle type. You know, vehicles are certainly costing more than ever, given where the market is. But generally speaking, a pickup truck is $6,000 to $7,000 over the course of a year. So when you figure a $30,000 to $35,000 pickup truck, you're going to pay about 20% of that cost, 20 to 25% of that cost under our program.
Would the department enter into some kind of a contract?
Yeah, so we enter into a master equity lease agreement, and then you essentially sign a lease quote for each individual vehicle that you would lease with us.
So that would establish the lease payments for the entire year? Or?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Question.
Yes.
I know we just got this, so I guess what I'm going to get down to is how much you're going to save the chief and his cars with what you're doing and what we have already.
Yeah. So that's an excellent segue. So what we did here is we profiled out the chief's fleet. You can see there are 24 vehicles that fell into this category. We're operating at about 15,000 miles per year. And then on average, we're buying vehicles, about 5 vehicles per year on average. I'm sure some vehicles it's not that many. Some years it's not that many. I'm sure some years it's more. But based on looking at the data, it looks like an average of about 5 purchases per year.
Question.
So, yep.
So that mileage thing, our payment varies on the miles we use a month,
100%.
like a rental car.
Exactly. We're going to base it based on our projected sale price at the end of the term, and you're essentially just going to pay for the portion that you're going to use.
Okay.
You may want to look at your papers for this because it's pretty small on the screen. But basically what we did here was we profiled out the 24 vehicles. I mentioned about 15,000 miles per year. In the first year, we're recommending replacing anything that's over 3 years old. So a little bit more than half the fleet fell into that category. We essentially would tighten that up over the first 3 years. So basically over a 3-year period, we'd be fully implemented and have the entire fleet on lease. That all sounds good on paper, and everyone would love to operate vehicles over a 3-year period, but we've got to make the financial sense to that. And so that's where this document becomes extremely important if you want to flip to what's called the fleet planning analysis. This yellow line here is essentially benchmarking what is currently being spent the way you operate today. So if you'd go out and buy 5 vehicles, you'd be paying cash for $220,000. Given the age of the fleet, knowing the types of vehicles, we're able to understand that the amount of preventative and non-preventative service that's going to be done on those vehicles. So we're estimating roughly $65,000. And then we look from a fuel standpoint, price of the pump, current miles per gallon, combined with your mileage. That's just a math equation to come up with $123,000 from a fuel standpoint. So then we actually are able to budget and sort of benchmark that $408,000. So that's sort of the starting point to say, hey, here's about what you're doing today. What would that look like on a program with Enterprise?
Aaron, real
Yep.
quick, I think Mr. Pato had a question.
Yes.
Do you have another question?
You do all the maintenance, right?
We can. We have an
You can.
ability.
That's okay. So there's a different price for both ways, I guess.
So we're able to put together a pass-through maintenance program. So essentially, we would have our team of folks making sure the right repair is being done on the vehicle, auditing on pricing, and outsourcing to different shops throughout the town or throughout the county. You can continue to do maintenance on your own, but that program obviously gives us that much more data to capture and kind of help you going forward.
So at the end of the lease period, are there some variables like if we took care of our own maintenance and we didn't do it properly, would you guys penalize us for that?
So there's no penalty. I would say the penalty would come in the, and I guess the level of service that you would have to do having not taken care of the vehicle, which could affect the resale price.
Yeah, I don't mean we wouldn't do it properly. We wouldn't do it to your standards. Or we'd do it above your standards, who knows?
Yeah, it could go either way. We just ask that you do it in adherence with what the manufacturer represents for that specific vehicle type.
Do you have a garage around here?
No, so we don't handle the service. We outsource to different shops throughout the town, throughout the county.
Okay.
Where's Enterprise located? I mean, where would they go to turn in their vehicles and get a different vehicle?
So we have a driver team that would handle all of that.
Oh, okay.
So we're off of West Washington Street, but we deliver vehicles all the way up to South Bend, down to Bloomington, all across the state.
What about the markings on the vehicles?
So we can take care of all that for you. If you notice the Hendricks County fleet over there, when we put this program in place, we put together one kind of consistent image, so you'll see the seal and then the department name. We took care of all that through the providers that we send a lot of business to. Any other questions?
So the sheriff's department is using this, the leasing program right now?
We work with almost every department except for the sheriff, and the reason over there is because they already kind of had infrastructure to handle that service, and they were already kind of doing that sort of thing. So we're continuing to have conversations, and I do think eventually we'll work with those folks based on the success we've had throughout the rest of the county, but not quite yet.
Okay.
So getting back to the analysis, I'm sure when I said 13 vehicles, you probably thought that's a crazy number to get in the first year. But if you look at it, if you go out and pay cash for 5, you're going to spend $220. If you're able to lease 13, you replace half your fleet in a year, and you can lease those vehicles for $130,000 on our program. Well, what I had my team do is I looked at those 13 vehicles and what they're worth in the market today. They're really at the right time and miles that we would recommend replacing. We'd be able to sell those vehicles for nearly $190,000. So we could essentially pay for the first year of leases with just the resale that we could come up with from the existing fleet. The obvious benefit to replacing your oldest vehicles that are at highest exposure for additional maintenance is now you've replaced half the fleet. They're just getting oil changes. So you drop in maintenance by about $19,000. You also pick up fuel economy savings. So in the first year, we could net a savings of roughly $300,000 while replacing, obviously, a half of the fleet. So obviously a pretty big impact in year one. We continue to play that out. If you look at year 23, we add the 3 more vehicles. Your lease number is going to climb. We can still offset that lease cost with the equity of selling the existing vehicles. But basically, you see year in and year out, your lease number is going to climb, but either the equity from the owned vehicle or the equity of the vehicles coming off lease can always offset those dollars while you get to a place where you've never been more efficient from a maintenance and a fuel standpoint. So long term, we're able to turn the fleet over, in this case, 3 times over, and net savings year in and year out. If you look at the 10-year savings, you're at $950,000. The number I like to look at is the average sustainable savings. That's looking at a fully operated or fully implemented program and not taking into account your existing owned equity. So that's basically once you're fully up and running. To your question, that's what that savings number would be.
Same page.
Yep.
At the bottom,
Yep.
about $947,000 savings over 10 years.
Right.
average, sustainable savings, average, over 10 years or over every year?
So that's looking at years 6 through 10, and the reason for that is because it's taking out the savings from your existing owned fleet. Theoretically, you could sell those vehicles with or without us. So taking that part of it out of the equation, we can still net a savings of nearly $70,000 versus the fleet budget of $408,000.
Per year?
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, that's essentially what I wanted to show you from an analysis standpoint. Clearly, this is a forecast, and it's something that we have to continue to sort of fine tune year in and year out. But we're going to customize what that solution looks like, and you're going to have an advocate in the vehicle market to make sure your folks get the vehicles they need to get the job done.
Right. So, Chief, do you have any feelings on this?
So every year when we do the actual bonding for the vehicles, they come up every 5 years for the vehicles. Year 5, we see maintenance like he's talking about. The cars start falling apart. Maintenance goes up. We spend a lot of money putting it into bad cars till we finally get to the point where we're getting ready to trade in. Then we go for bonds. With the bonding issue, what we're seeing is we lose $40,000, $50,000 off the top. So we're losing a vehicle every time we bond. That goes to legal fees, bonding fees. Somebody else gets some money. So we're losing money right off the top when we bond, and then the 5 years, the vehicles are starting to fall apart on us. We have the maintenance on them is getting bad. It's costing more money for the town. So that's why I wanted to look at this as an option for us. Maybe preventively, we're not dumping all the money into a bad vehicle like he's talking about. Maybe we're saving money by not doing the bonds. And I know I'm not an expert on the circuit breaker, but as the community continues to grow, I know the school's going to start doing some more bonding. They want to do remodeling at the school. So I don't know if that would come into effect. You can only bond so much in a geographic area. I don't know. You're an expert on that.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have a problem. There's a limit as to what each municipality can take as a debt cap, but the school is going to be a different taxing entity. But my partners, you can't tell anybody back at the office. I agree with the chief. If you're going out and you're bonding vehicles every 5 years, you are paying $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in legal fees, plus another $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in your FA fees to do the paperwork on the background and get the closing done. And so it's going to be upwards of $80,000 to $100,000 to $120,000 that you're spending in professional fees on that. I am not a proponent of bonding for items that depreciate like vehicles. It makes sense when you are putting in infrastructure, when you're doing public works, when you've got to put in a wastewater treatment facility. That makes sense to bond. But for something that depreciates like this, I think you're throwing good money after bad.
So it sounds to me like we're paying you too much.
For the record, I don't think we've handled any of the bonds associated with vehicle purchase.
Where's our wiggle room to get a smaller price?
Well,
that's not good. None of that laughing shit.
So here's the deal: is what you'd want to do is sign up for a purchasing cooperative called Sourcewell. It's they essentially vetted our contract and our services and went to RFP. We were awarded that, and that guarantees you the lowest possible pricing.
When, in a practical sense, when you are carrying this out with different police departments, and they need a new car for somebody, one of the officers, is that a new car? Is that a car with a lot of miles on it that you bring over, or?
No, so these aren't our rental cars, just to be clear.
Okay.
We order direct from the manufacturer. That's the best way to lock in, to your point, the best way to lock in the best pricing at invoice cost, less whatever the best incentive is. And so we'll work through different manufacturers and figure out what that right vehicle is for the application.
Okay. So, we could still have, like right now, there's some SUVs and then there's some, regular sedans. And so they would be able to pretty much get what they want.
Not only will they get what they want, but I will show sort of what every vehicle's cent per mile is, so they can make the best decision from a budget standpoint and from an application standpoint.
You're not having a problem with inventory?
We certainly are having a problem. It's not been fun.
Okay.
But what we do is we get proactive, and we make sure, and I was just telling Chief, we need to be ready to order the vehicles he's going to need in July. Because the people who get in July, they're going to have vehicles deliver, and the people who wait and drag their feet, they're going to have their orders canceled. So it's more important than ever to be proactive on the purchase side of things.
Any other questions from the rest of the council?
All right, I have a couple. And I know you went through all this, just top 2 or 3 factors that go into what you charge the police department or the town of Danville for these vehicles on a monthly or annual basis. What are the 2 or 3 main factors?
Of what we charge?
Yeah, like the lease.
It's really just depreciation. There's a component of interest.
Okay.
And then we charge a management fee,
Okay.
which is a percentage cost of the vehicle. But that's all baked into this analysis.
Okay. So our mileage, the miles we drive, does that play into that?
Yeah. So we're going to look at it on a vehicle by vehicle basis. I told you the average is 15,000, but we could look at this list, and there may be vehicles that need to be on a 20,000 mile clip. There may be some that need to be on a 10,000. We can adjust that based on the application.
Okay. Question for Chief Hilton.
Yes, sir.
Actually, if you'll wait 1 minute, I have one more question for you. Sorry. And you might be able to answer too, Chief. In your analysis on these savings, your comparison, are you using actual DPD costs, or is that estimated using some other metric?
We're using actual vehicle costs.
So what we pay on an annual basis now compared to what we would pay if we leased the vehicles?
So we could dive deeper into this analysis and try to come up with what your exact maintenance number is. The maintenance number is forecasted based on similar vehicles, but everything else is
Okay.
solid.
That average sustainable savings of 69,000, that doesn't include the savings of attorney's fees and things like that, right?
Correct.
With the bonding? Okay.
Correct.
So in theory, if this is even close, we could save more by saving on professional fees. Okay.
Right.
And then my question for you, Chief, I'll preface it by saying I'm not talking about a take-home policy because I completely support police cars at home.
Right.
Because I like them in the community. I think it helps. But in terms of our personal use policy, like can they drive it to Lake Michigan for a family vacation?
No Lake Michigan.
Okay.
No.
The reason I ask that obviously is because if our average of 15,000 miles a year, does that include a heavy amount of personal use outside of just being in the community when you go to the grocery store and things like that?
I would say not, because
Okay.
we're not traveling to Lake Michigan or not even Raccoon Lake or anything like
Okay.
that. So no.
All right. Obviously, I asked that since the mileage factors into our costs. Okay, thank you. Oh, Mr. Morgan has a question.
Canines, does that affect the value? Because I know even though we take the seats out, we put in kennels, and then when we're done with it, we put the seats back in. It's been my experience that smells pretty tough to get rid of. Does that affect the value of those two vehicles?
On the front end going in, what the vehicle is going to be used for, so that we can kind of take all that into account. It's not going to have huge swings on the vehicle market because we're able to do some things to recondition and things like that.
Anything else from the council? Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't think those are mine.
Is Hertz outside?
I was going to ask that.
Chief, is Hertz
Thank you.
outside or Avis?
No.
Get the Avis guy in. We're going to get the Avis guy in.
Thank you. Okay. Next on our list, we have Town IT Services. Assistant Town Manager would like to lead a discussion on our IT services. Mr. Lacy.
All right, so in front of you, I just kind of laid out the, we did a breakdown of the IT contract. You've seen this before. And in that's just all the services that we currently are using from One Choice Technology, which is our current provider. We are getting close to a point where, so our contract ends at the end of 2022, 2023. We want to we're looking, do we go to RFP, do we not? So we talked as a committee today, and we've talked a little bit about, are we happy with the services we have, those kinds of things. And today we do like the services we have, and we kind of wanted to come to you guys and see what you think about, do we want to go with what we have for, future contract? Do we negotiate with them? Or do we look to go out for an RFP? And that's kind of where we are today. So we have to give notice by, I think, October 1st. And Corey
He just
walked out.
was here. We have to give notice by October 1st if we are going to change, just because of how the contract reads. So we wanted to get ahead of it, knowing that it'll probably take us 4 to 6 weeks to be able to put together an RFP to go out for services. And half of that is you usually use your current provider to build the RFP for the next provider, so which is going to have a cost to it, kind of moving forward. So we just wanted to test the waters and kind of find out what direction you guys want us to go. As an IT committee, we feel like we're happy with the services, but we're okay if you want to look out, maybe reach out to the employees, do a survey, see where we're at. Maybe there's some things that they could work on. Or go for an RFP and kind of start over. So kind of the ball's in your court. We're just wanting to know so that we have enough time to put all those things together if that's the way you want to go.
I have one.
Go ahead.
Okay. One thing I had asked about, understanding that the RFP process is pretty extensive, is there a way for us to get any type of feedback from other companies without going through that long process? Since we are supposed to be looking out for the taxpayer dollars, I want to make sure that we're covering all those bases. Is that even a possibility?
The hard part is you want them to do what you have or better than what you have, in those services.
Sure.
So without writing a full contract of what you have and what your expectations are, you're going to get any price.
Sure. Okay.
And it's public knowledge currently. I mean, it's right here.
Yeah.
So, to get under bid is pretty easy. We have pretty good service right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we're, happy with where we are.
Certainly there's value in that as well.
Yeah, but we do understand dollar amounts too.
So this 162, this is the next contract that we would sign? Or is it our current
depending
contract?
on if you wanted to try to negotiate or do other items. This is the current contract we are, which lasts through 2022.
Okay.
And I know we've spoke with Corey, and he has given us some idea that he could freeze the contract for us and not do any inflation rates, which would be pretty nice given the current economy. Everything seems to be going up. So that would be nice, but if you wanted us to negotiate further, we could as well. He also did offer to redo our phone tree in that, which we're redoing the website right now. And once we finish the website, our next move is to go after the phone tree and try to make it a little easier to navigate and match the website. So kind of like how you would click through the website to find your information, you would navigate through the phone tree the same way. Hopefully making it easier for the citizens to find what they want, and then they don't have to hit 0. They can get the information right there. Do you want to hear from One Choice at all?
Yeah, if Corey has anything to add.
Sure. Good evening.
Good evening.
I think everybody knows me, but I'm Corey Kaler from One Choice Technology. I did want to just kind of talk about some of the things that I know have come up about our contract over the last several years. and some things that came up during the renewal 2.5 years ago when several of you weren't here during that time. So do they have this spreadsheet in front of them? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is that the same
yeah,
thing?
same thing. Awesome. So if you're looking down the list of services that we provide for the town, down the left-hand side, the only thing that we really get paid for, so to speak, is basically the first 3 lines. So IT support PCs, IT support servers, and IT support networking and network equipment. Within those, we have fixed costs that are built in that include system monitoring systems that we have in place that monitor your equipment and the power quality and all those kind of things that we monitor. We have a software that's built into there that monitors all the computers. It provides antivirus services. It provides some automated the remote access that we have to the computers to help people with troubleshooting and help them with issues. All that kind of stuff are fixed costs that we have in that are built into that price. And then everything, and then our profit, just to be frank with you, our profit and our business comes out of what's left out of those 3 line items. The rest of this contract, for the most part, in the first section, so Office 365 subscription, there's 3 types of those. Those are based on the needs of various employees. The different subscription types are, are they a person who needs full-blown apps? Are they sitting at a desk all day using a desktop computer? Or are they wastewater or water or a DPW employee that just needs email on their phone? Like that kind of thing. Email and virus or email spam and virus filtering for email, Cisco Umbrella, which is helping maintain the acceptable use policies for the town, VMware support, disaster and recovery, and duo multi-factor authentication. All those things are subscription services that we provide to you merely out of convenience. I don't make any more than roughly 5% on margin on any of those products. I simply provide them because it's a management nightmare if I don't. And we get it all under one umbrella for you. So I know a lot of times it's said that, you guys pay us a lot of money. And those are all those things that I just mentioned, everything in that top section, less the first 3 items, are things you would have if you didn't have me or didn't have One Choice Technology. Those are things you would still need. They're expenses you would still have. So of that 162, there's really only about 100,000 of that is actually going to provide IT support for the town, if that makes sense. And then obviously the phone system is what it is. That cost is pretty fixed, and we're very competitive in the phone market if you've done any kind of other research. Most of our closest competitors on a system this size would be somewhere around $20 to $35 at the high end per extension based on that. And we include, if you're trying to kind of shop that around, one of the things we do is we include full management of the system. So if you have an employee, a move, add, change, a termination and onboarding, we take care of all that. If you need a name changed or an office moves, or you need the buttons reprogrammed on their phone, or they need help changing their voicemail or resetting a password. Those are all things that before we came to the table, the town of Danville managed on their own, and quite frankly, they were not managed. Things just didn't get done. You had people that, that person moved out of that office 5 years ago and their name was still someone who hasn't worked here for 5 years on the phone system. So those are things that we take care of, and that cost is all inclusive. The other thing that's included in that is all local and long distance calling, your dial tone, so to speak, is included in that, which is not the case in most other VoIP phone systems. You would have to go out, and this is how it was when we came to the table as well. You had the phone system, you managed it yourself, but then you also had to pay a company for the phone lines, so to speak. We include all of that in one cost, and it's all fully managed. So it's not an apples to apples if you're trying to kind of shop that around. Telephone system licensing, again, that's an expense you would have with or without us. Pretty much all phone systems nowadays are software-based in some way. So there's licensing involved in having the software to run the phone system and things like that. Are there any, I guess one last point is, the really, as you see, we had a 3-year contract. The price was locked in for 3 years, so we had 20, 21, and 22. And the only thing that had really changed is the quantities changed from one year to the next. And you see that I was able to, underneath where it says recurring IT recurring total, there's a per PC annual cost. You had 133 in 21, and you went to 139 in 22, and the cost went down. Basically because of the kind of the economy of scale that's going on there, and some of the things that we were able to do by reducing some of the other numbers. We switched to a different spam filtering subscription, and you went from 157 to 119. That was because the new subscription service we went to doesn't count mailboxes like info and jobs and HR and these shared mailboxes. They used to be counted. We went to a newer system that saved you money, and we're able to get some of those costs down. So those are the other kind of things, much like the enterprise guy was saying, is we're constantly evaluating what we have and what you guys are spending and how we can find solutions that help save the town money. One of the other points that I mentioned to David when we spoke last was I'm heavily involved in the police department in Danville, and I'm to a lesser degree involved with the fire department. As far as I'm friends with a lot of those guys, but they the police officers call me at home on not a constant basis, but a lot in the evenings, on the weekends. The fire department does the same thing. They can pick up the phone, and I'm usually Johnny on the spot if I'm not out doing something with my family or whatever. I'm usually here nights, weekends. If they need help, they'll bring their car to my house. I live in town. They'll sit out front. We'll fix whatever problem they're having, or I'll open my laptop and sit on the recliner with the dog and, remote in and help them fix whatever issue they're having. And I know that's been a huge benefit for the guys on the public safety side, just because they can get that level of service. We don't charge for that. It's not something that we technically provide, but Danville's where I live. This is where my family's from. Both sides of my family are from here, and I care about my community, and I certainly care about public safety. So those are things that we offer, a level of service that just you're simply not going to get someplace else.
You made a good point earlier about, responsible spending, and I 100% agree. We work for the people of Danville, but, you got to look at the satisfaction of, we got how many employees in here, town employees. If we don't hear those complaints, and I travel to 38 companies around the state, and I hear about 37 complaints about the IT department. Mm-hmm. And they're, thanks for your service on the police department, by the way.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
But thanks for providing that after-hours service and helping our guys out when they need it.
If I can, no, you're fine. Go ahead.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I think it's good to have these discussions every year, just so we're keeping each other, on the same page. And
so one of the things. I completely agree. More importantly, almost than this, is I'm a citizen of Danville and a constituent of all of you and a taxpayer. So, I also want to make sure that you're being a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars. And I honestly feel like we're providing you a very competitive service at a very competitive, great service at a very competitive price. One of the things that David and I had also discussed was some incentives to keep the contract with us and to kind of make sure that you can tell the taxpayers that you guys are being good stewards of their money. And one of those things is we'll mention it, we would be willing to take on a project which would be probably a little it'd be costly or somewhat costly to redo the phone tree. We had dozens of hours in that the last time we did it. We sat down and designed it, and there's, if any of you have called in, there's dozens of menus, and there's all kinds of options, and there's a menu for every single department, and it does need some work. I think nobody really knew. We went from the town having multiple numbers. Every department had their own number to one consolidated number, and nobody really knew for sure what we wanted. Now we've lived with it for a few years, and it's kind of like, okay, now we know what we did wrong and what we did right, and we can reevaluate. So that's a project that we would be willing to do for renewal, for renewal of the contract, especially including the phone services. The other thing that I would mention is our contract was for 3 years. If you just go online and go to an inflation calculator and you look at from the day that this contract started till when I ran it last, the numbers were good through March of this year. Inflation numbers hadn't been officially published at that time beyond March, but the $55 that we were looking at was supposed to be up. It was about $6 higher than that, so it was somewhere between $60 and $61. So you're looking at over a 10% overall inflation through two-thirds of this contract, or just over two-thirds of this contract. So if we can lock that price in, so what you see in the 2022 column under the amounts is we would be willing to lock that in for the first year and negotiate maybe some sort of a price increase over the next 2 years or something. Start the negotiation from there. But basically, we would eat the inflation that's occurred during this contract for the first year in order to kind of say, hey, we really appreciate what you guys are doing for us, and we want to continue the business. So I just want to throw that out there.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else, Council? Mark, do you have anything? Okay. What's the next step at this point, Will?
For me, it would be direction for the IT committee. Like, what do you want us to look at? Negotiations, bring a contract back, or would you like us to go out to RFP? Can we make a decision in here about a decision?
Uh-oh. Chief Roberts has something.
Good evening. I sit on the IT committee, and I sat on the committee when myself and Will, when we first started the IT services for the town, and we're 110% satisfied with what we have. And we upgraded our software at the fire department, our station alerting system, and we had an IT service from Plainfield come out, their IT people, and they could not figure out our system that was upgraded. And they're the ones that upgraded the system through Marion County for the MECA system for our station alerting system. I recommended that we get our IT department involved in it, and I talked to the director of communications. We all had a meeting down there, and I would have to say within about 30 minutes, One Choice Technology had the system figured out, and we were back online. And we were offline for 2 weeks with the station alerting system. So we have a day mode and we have a night mode. So we had to stay on the day mode for every department in the county to be dispatched at night. So we heard every department being dispatched. And within 30 minutes, he had it figured out. So fire department side, we were very happy with One Choice. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What can we do at this point? Nothing? Okay. Okay.
No direction.
Then I will just say
Maybe
thank
direction.
you. Can I make a suggestion to Will? Okay. Well, regardless of where we land on all this, it might not be a bad idea to do a survey. Just that way, if there are things that we're not thinking about or you're not thinking about that maybe we can get One Choice to work with us on, just to make sure the employees are satisfied across the board. And so I can speak from my personal experience. There are things about IT that are frustrating. We try to work through. So
Yes.
it might be a good idea regardless, just to get their
I'm happy to
feedback.
do that.
Okay.
Maybe I'll come back and we can go from there.
A very vague statement.
Or I may just ask the council for some direction during the regular meeting under legal.
What he said.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, though. I really appreciate it, because the IT committee's been working really hard on moving forward and making things better. And I wish you could have seen what it was like back in the day. But We're not looking back, we're looking forward, and we want to have quality service because it not only helps us do our job, but it impacts the citizens and how they get information and
Sure.
and how they speak with us. And when you put out quality, it's quality comes back the same way. So I appreciate that.
You guys are the ones in the trenches using this stuff every single day, all day. So, we have to be good stewards of money, but we also have to consider that too and weigh that. So
Yep.
I appreciate you going through that effort. And Corey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. 5-0 or 4-0. We're adjourned.